Nikki here. I'm here today to do my movie review to go with my paired reviews for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. I had to give my book back to my mom because she wanted to lend it to my sisters, so I don't have it for this video. In summary, this is the third installment, same as the book. It follows the book mostly closely. It's a pretty fun movie overall, and it's the first that starts to get a little bit darker. As with the book, this is a good book for the main trio, especially for Hermione. And with that, I'll just jump right in. So for my likes and dislikes, I'll start with my likes, and with my dislikes, just the norm. First like is that it did stay pretty close to the book. The movie did a good job of keeping all the really important stuff in while mixing up everything else to make it more entertaining on the silver screen as opposed to reading it in a book. There is not as much overlap there as I would like in terms of what translates well to the screen. My second like is the representation of the Dementors. I have to be completely honest, it's not what I had envisioned in my mind when I was reading it. But that being said, the first time I read this book, I was like 11. And so what I had in my mind was something that was a lot more cartoony and less threatening. And I really liked the way that they chose to represent them in the book here. They have that very creepy, chilly, don't touch me vibe about them. Third like is that Hermione still got her story arc. It was a little bit harder to show because they weren't able to show as effectively how busy she was as they did in the book, because in the book there's a lot more downtime where they could comment on stuff like that, and they didn't have that in the movie to use to the same extent. But I still think they did a pretty good job, and it really helped define her character and her intelligence a lot more. And with that, I'll slide over to the dislikes. 3 of these again. The first negative is the Whomping Willow. I really didn't care for the design of this tree. I don't like the club-like branches. In my mind, it was this like strangely large willow tree, but it looked like a willow tree, like it had the snapping kind of whipping branches that were thin and not as thick. And as you got closer to the trunk, those branches did get thicker, but it didn't have that same kind of club, like pugilist feel as the movie one does. And I didn't care for how they translated that over to the screen. My second big dislike is the lack of Ron and Hermione fighting. In the book, this was a huge plot point and a huge point of contention between the two, and I absolutely hated that this was missing from this movie because it added so much flavor and character to just kind of the everyday stuff, and that was completely missing in the movie. And then my final negative is that at the end, things not necessarily happened out of order, but the way they were doing it really dragged out the ending and placed a lot more action on it, which I thought was a little disappointing because the really important stuff was like the connection Harry had developed to this world through this new family member, through Sirius, and the way the world was kind of built up, just with how it was presented to him. Some of the creative liberties they took with that action just disappointed me quite a bit. But you gotta make the movie fast-paced, and that's what they did. And that's all I'm really gonna say for my likes and dislikes here. I'm gonna scoot on over to the characters and kind of do a brief summary there now. So I think they still did a really fantastic job casting. I especially loved Trelawney. I thought she was brilliant and exactly how I pictured her in my mind. And I was completely shook when I found out Emma Thompson was playing that role. I've seen her in other things, and I think she's a very talented actress, but the way they I almost don't recognize her with how she fits into this Trelawney role and is at such odds with some of the other characters I've seen her in. I was astonished, but incredibly impressed. Again, just to touch base again here with Hermione, I think she had a very good character arc here. I wish there had been more development between her and Ron with their fight, but you can't get everything you like. Overall, I think they did pretty good. They stuck close enough to the book that I can't say any huge development points for characters were missing. and this is the first of the books that's starting to get just thick enough that they're going to really start cutting out a lot more of the fluff to make the movie a good length. Overall, I think they did pretty good. I can't complain too much about the casting choices and the direction that the actors were given for the characters. And with that, I will slide on down into my wrap up. As usual, I'm going to give 2 different scores here. I'm going to give my movie score and then my book to movie adaptation score. My movie score, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I found that as someone who has read the books and watched the movie, I think some people would be a little bit confused having only watched the movie rather than read the books along with the series. There are just a handful of things that are referenced in the movie that make little sense if you haven't read the books. And I think there may have been a better way to present that, or to present more information to give a lot better context. The pacing I found was a little bit wonky, but again, the really important stuff was kind of put on the back seat for some of the action, and the action was more strongly emphasized, which overall is fine. I just felt like certain things didn't make as much sense because you didn't get as much information early on. In terms of movie dialogue to action balance, it was pretty good. There could have been a little bit more dialogue just to give a little bit extra information, but that would have been at the cost of keeping the pacing up, I guess. So pretty good job. Not the best movie I've ever seen, but they did a really good job, and I think anybody who likes that kind of fantastical elements in a movie and has seen the first 2 will enjoy the third just fine. And with that, I'll go to the book to movie adaptation score. This I gave a 4 out of 5. I think they did a pretty good job. As I mentioned, they kept some really important stuff, and stuff they got rid of, for the most part, wasn't too big, with the exception of Ron and Hermione fighting. Yeah, they did a pretty good job with the plot. I really did most of the characters justice, especially looking at Trelawney and how Emma Thompson presented her. And although I wish there had been a better way to kind of show the busyness of Hermione and the tiredness of Hermione because of the Time Turner arc, I still really liked overall the character development she had with it, and the fact that the Time Turner still filled the same role it did in the book. With that, I will leave you guys here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!